Okay, we're here with Scott Largent, and we're going to go over what supervised visits look like in Santa Clara County. So, Scott, you went 2 years without seeing your daughter.
Correct.
And you were ordered to have supervised visits in the beginning, and that you agreed would be with her parents.
Correct.
And that fell out, and you then had to go to supervised visits through another provider. And you first, if I understand, you were first went to the free program that was offered through the county courts. Can you describe what you went through to try to register for that?
Yeah, the one through the courts kind of came up before, just right before this one right here through the first, through Kids First. But prior to that, I would go through the actual list that was provided and contact all the different ones. So there wasn't just these ones here. There was about 10 of them. And those lists are right here. Somewhere around here. And these are the provider lists they provide to the court. So now the thing with these lists is most of them don't call back, which was really hard. In the beginning, what I did is I tried the ones that were provided by the county and by Children's Services. Now, those ones are disconnected telephone numbers.
So you went to first, though, didn't you go to the court system through the program that is funded with the state grant funds?
No. The one that I went through was through Catholic Charity Services.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
how long did it take you to get an answer from Catholic Charity Services about your visitation?
Well, I got a call back in about a week, and then they told me that it was a 16-week waiting time. So then what I did is I called back. I waited about 6 weeks. I tried to figure out if there were cancellations. Now, I told them in the beginning if there was any cancellation, anytime, whatever I could do. And
so you had to wait 16 weeks through Catholic Charities in order to see your child.
Well, correct. But then the problem is after about 8 weeks, when I continued to call, I kept leaving messages. They were defunded by our county. So I was leaving messages in a ghost message machine.
So now you're out 16, 17 weeks, and then what did you do?
I kept calling that number. I literally kept calling and calling, and sooner and later I was crying, calling that number, saying, "Please call me back. I need visitation for my child." And then what I did is I went to all the children's, seniors, and safety meetings and kept telling them that these numbers are disconnected. So if you look on here, and it's the same way on their site right now, these are Catholic Charity Services, and if you look at the first one on there, it says access to visitation. And this is the number that I continue to call. Now, this number right now is still not disconnected.
And what time period, what year was this? This was when your daughter was how old?
Let me see. My daughter at this point was a year old.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so you lost several months trying to go through this program to get under the
I lost
supervisor.
probably 6 months trying to use this program.
Okay.
And then after that, what I did is I started going to the ones on the list, because by that time, financially, I was kind of getting out of the dumps on that, and I was starting to be able to afford some of these places. So what I did, I started calling ones that were on the list, and I started, of course, most of them never even answered the phone. Some of them I sent emails to. Most of them didn't pan out, and then finally what ended up happening at a supervisor meeting, I was speaking about this, and Paul Murphy from Supervisor Chavez's office came down and he provided me a list that he printed. Now, it was similar to the one I had.
So the court never gave you this. Paul Murphy from Santa Clara County's now whistleblower program gave you this, but you were never given this from the court.
Yeah, at the time, Paul was a policy aide for Supervisor Cindy Chavez, so it was an extension of Cindy Chavez's, trying to help me out.
And your court orders provided that you could see your daughter 8 hours a week. Is that correct?
Correct. It was twice a week, 4 hours, so 8 hours a week. Correct.
And so during this time period where your ex-girlfriend, who you had a child with, you were never married. Your case is closed because of the law in California. Mm-hmm. Nobody can look it up. For this period of time, you don't have a lawyer, and you're trying to see your daughter, and you're going to public meetings and making comments, and you're also trying Catholic Charities and all the numbers on the list that anybody will provide you.
Correct. Anything. I'm trying to figure out, just throw whatever out there and see what sticks. I tried everything.
And in the meantime, you don't see your daughter.
No, not at all.
And that list, can you hold up that list?
So this is another list of the providers right here. And if you noticed, and he was actually, the referral from Paul Paul actually knew Richard Garcia. They were co-workers, I believe, with the school district a long time ago. And so what Paul ended up doing, he got the list. Paul kind of was proactive about it. He looked it over. He saw Richard on there. And then Paul made a call to Richard, which was really great. So I got on the horn with Richard, but Richard was $150 an hour.
So I want to make sure that people understand this. In order to see your own child, you have a court order that says you can see her only 8 hours a week, which most people have a hard time understanding.
Yeah.
And at this point, do you have a criminal record?
No, I do not.
Do you have any domestic violence between your ex or your child that would preclude you from seeing your child?
No.
So there's no domestic violence between you, no cause of concern for safety, and yet there's a court order that says you're limited to 8-hour visitations.
Yeah. But now, in the beginning of this, there was a stay-away order. Now, she did have the temporary restraining order. After 3 weeks of getting it, I went in front of Judge Pennypacker, and when I explained that, brought in drug tests, told him I was sober, told him what I was doing, he ended up changing the order, making it civil and peaceful contact. So this was a civil order, not a criminal. There was no criminal domestic violence.
So you now have an order, and you just can't see your daughter. And so all of a sudden, this turns into days, and then weeks, and then months, and you're trying all these people. And so you contact Richard Garcia, and what happens?
So what I did is I contacted Richard Garcia, and I went in there to meet with him. Now, Paul, I believe, had talked to him after the original meeting that I had and kind of went through the list because I kind of got ahead of myself on that. Richard realized that he recognized who I was after about 15 minutes of being in there. He said, "Oh, Scott, you go to these meetings, you speak up about the stuff in the community." He goes, "Oh, I watch them all the time." And so he kind of knows what I've been speaking about and that I've been fighting for my kid. I went and toured his office on the Alameda. He's also a child psychologist and a family psychologist. This place was really nice. They work with families, reunification, co-parenting issues, and it would have been worth the $150, I think. Even though it's pretty expensive, this could have been the right path to co-parenting and getting off of this.
I want to stop you for a minute there because I think people will have a really hard time understanding this. For this person to simply watch you with your child, they were going to charge you $150 an hour.
Correct.
And at 8 hours a week, if you were to take full advantage of the 8 hours, did you ever do the math on how much that would cost you?
Yeah, no, I definitely did. It would cost me about $4,700 a month. Yeah, I believe that's what it was.
How much?
$4,500 a month, $4,700.
$4,500 a month simply to see your child.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have $4,700 a month to see your child?
No. And I started to save up money doing side work and doing stuff here at Grandma's house, and I did get on cash aid. I got on the food stamp thing, but cash aid I was getting $195 a month, so I started saving that money. And by the time this visit thing was going to hit, I had $1,200 saved up. So at least I could start the process and then scramble to make it work. Oh.
And what happened with Richard Garcia?
With Richard Garcia, and I kept it pretty well documented in here, what I ended up doing, he had everything pretty much going. I paid the intake fee. He had met with me at his office. Then he met with Jennifer. And then what Jennifer, I believe he met with Jennifer, but what she had said is that it wasn't a valid court order. It wasn't a court order, and that he would have to see the court order. So I said, no problem at all. And I actually had brought in the original one. So what I thought at that point, she was requesting it. He was requesting it again. I said, why don't I just go down to the courthouse, pay for another certified copy of it? And, at the time, I was walking at that time, I went all the way back over to the court, got it, went right back over to Richard Gregg's thing, dropped it off, and she stopped talking to him.
Who stopped talking to them?
My ex. And
so then what happened?
I continued to call Richard and asked him to continue to try to get a hold of Jennifer because we were almost at that point of being able to do it. And then what I decided to do is, why not? I wasn't doing it to harass her. I said, well, if she's not comfortable with Richard, why don't I start finding every single one of these that I can and see what sticks? And so that's what I started doing. These are text messages and emails of these are just all the different correspondence with Jennifer, with Linda McCormick.
Can you flip that for me?
Yeah. So, like, for instance, this is Linda McCormick.
And who's Linda McCormick on the
She's
list?
another one that's on the list right here. I believe Linda McCormick is right here. Compassion Supervised Visitation. Now, Linda was $50 an hour. And Linda was a really nice gal, too. I really liked Linda. And what I liked about Linda is she was very much, let's get a hold of Jennifer, let's contact her, you need to go file a police report, we need to get you in your daughter's life. I mean, Linda was the bomb, but Jennifer wouldn't cooperate with Linda either.
And so when you say it's $50 an hour and that's a good deal, do you realize that some people would be shocked to know that you have to pay $50 an hour to see your own child?
Yeah, no, it's extremely expensive.
So then you go through this process, and then you're told about the grant funding and the supervised visit inside the Santa Clara County Family Courthouse.
Correct, and I don't believe it's not Children First. I do have the email from the gal, but there is a program that's offered through our courthouse, and I don't have that packet right in front of me, but it is through Family Court Services, and they would only offer 1 hour a week, and the court at the time was offering me 8 hours that I was entitled to.
And could you explain for everybody what that visit looked like? It was that you had to do an intake form, and what did they tell you?
I had to go out there and I had to fill out. That was what was really weird. I had to go through almost, I believe it was probably about 15 or 20 pages, and I had to initial on every single one of these things, and it talked a lot about if there's an emergency, if there's a disaster, if something happens. So if the fire alarm goes off, which you always hear it in the court when you hear those alarms going off, I have to immediately leave the room. So, if bad things are going on, I can't protect my child. They say I have to leave, go down the hallway, go into the elevator, and go the floor down, which is really strange, but yeah.
And Scott, you hadn't seen your daughter at this point for almost 2 years, and what did you think about that you were going to have to see her inside the family courthouse?
Yeah, I really didn't like that, but I had to do what I had to do. I was glad that they were, that this was another option. I thought the fact that it was at the court that my ex would actually cooperate. I figured since these were all different locations, I thought she would cooperate, and she wouldn't.
And at that point, did you learn that she was represented by an attorney?
You go back a little bit, I started filing police reports, and I filed police reports throughout this whole process. They didn't do anything. I had them contact her from the PD. They didn't do anything. So then what I did is I went to the San Jose Family Violence Unit, and that was the step up. Well, prior to that, I met with Chief Garcia and Deputy Chief Knopf, and I went over what was going on, and it's a horrible system. Nobody did anything.
And in the meantime, you're not seeing your child.
Correct. I'm not seeing my child at all. And then I kept speaking up at meetings. I kept meeting with these people. So then what I did is I filed the report with the district attorney's office.
Okay, we're going to stop there for a second.